Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Mr. Potiker here with a screencast-o-matic presentation to help you further with the study guide for Egypt. Before we get started, I wanted to, of course, follow up with all of you and just explain to you the general understandings and criterion which will be used to grade your study guides. In case you couldn't tell, you are not taking big unit tests for me this year in world cultures. Instead, you're doing little mini quizzes every week, on a standard week anyway, to assess your knowledge of content. So study guides still serve a purpose though, because of course they help synthesize all the content that we learned, and of course they help us embellish off of the most important points to remember them for the future. The study guide is basically broken into 6 different parts. The first half of each part deals with vocab key terms, which you are to provide a definition with it in your own words. And then of course, key concept questions. It is encouraged here, guys, that you use the links on Google Classroom to help you answer these things out. Keep in mind, in theory, if you've done all the lessons, these questions should be easy and no trouble at all. On some of the questions, you'll find links which you are to click, and of course, write down the answers here accordingly in a different colored font. Now, if you were in my hybrid group, of course, we did do some of this together. However, I left some exercises here for you to complete, like the chart on Old, Middle, and New Kingdom Egypt, and some other things as well, like the Pharaoh's chart as well. So, for the rest of you, however, to promote equity and to get you guys on the same page of understanding, I want to at least give you an opportunity to do part 5 and part 6 here together with me. So let's go ahead and define what a pantheon is. In Egyptian history and culture, basically it's a system of deities and godlike forces and a religion. Polytheistic as a key term just basically means a belief in many gods or spirits. You could use that operative term as well. And a deity, of course, is a central force or a figure in a religion. A hidden god, of course, refers to a special type of deity that is in many ways like a real god, except has hidden, sometimes subversive powers. Atum or Amun-Ra is the creator god in the pantheon, and is arguably one of the most important gods. And Akhenaten, or An, of course, was the pharaoh who converted most of Egypt to be a monotheistic culture for a large period of time. So in any ways, we pretty much understood a little bit more about the Egyptian religion and culture from a religious standpoint in this way. Let's go ahead and answer some of these questions down here. So for the next part here, we're going to look at the different types of gods that existed in the pantheon. You have the creator god Atum or Amun-Ra, the male god Shu, or the life spirit, the female god Tefnut, the world order, and their kids are Geb and Nut, of course, which give birth to Osiris and Isis. Now, you may or may not remember this, but generally speaking, characteristics that most gods and goddesses share in Egypt consist of the following. Many of them, of course, have magical and mystical powers. Additionally, some of them, of course, oversee certain types of culture and, of course, the earth. And some of these gods and goddesses have different types of relationships, both with the people of Egypt and, of course, I guess you could say each other as well, because some of them have complicated webs that are woven there. Briefly summarize the story of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and explain the following. What happened to him? Who discovered his body? What did she do? And why is he worshipped all over Egypt? So basically, if you remember, Osiris was tricked to going inside a coffin by Set. Set hacked Osiris to pieces. Isis was the one who found Osiris, and of course, in this way, she found him and all of the body parts all around Egypt. And in many ways, that's why there are many different types of temples around regions of Egypt that pay homage to Osiris. Okay, so there you go. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next part here, part 6. Okay, so for part 6, we're going to go ahead and look at the final part of the unit here on the making of modern Egypt. Let's go ahead and talk about some of these key terms here. Looters are basically people who steal, I guess you could say, antiquities from tombs or ancient sites. in Egypt. If you remember watching a Vice News documentary on this, that's why it matters. We also talked about antiquities in general being stolen. You might be wondering, what is an antiquity? An antiquity in this way is nothing more than just, I guess you could say, a special keepsake or artifact belonging to Egyptian royalty or people in general, actually, that are being stolen. Now, the black market here, of course, refers to the system of trading and buying of illegal products, and as you guys recall from watching the documentary, there is a severe demand for these antiquities. The revolution here, of course, refers to a time period in Egypt when Egyptians themselves overthrew dictatorial rulers. If you remember learning about the Arab Spring, which is our next term here, of course, that refers to a time when Egyptians were influenced by the fervor of the Arab world, of people wanting to usher in democratic values and overthrowing dictatorships. And this is a term that you actually don't need, agricultural revolution. I'm sorry, that was copied there from the last study guide. But there you go. You have your definitions there for those key terms. All right, let's go ahead and talk about these key concept questions. Explain what other types of people ruled Egypt ever since the ancient era. Think about colonialism in Africa. So if you remember, you saw a map if you did the other lesson here. Obviously, European superpowers had a big role to play in Egypt and in Africa. Of course, these people consist of the French, also the British, and then, of course, later on the Ottoman Turks. We talked about these people in a capacity which allowed us a chance to understand a little bit more about what colonization does to places like this as well. This, of course, had positive and negative impacts on people in Egypt, too. Additionally, what types of good or bad things did strong leaders in Egypt, like Ali and Nasser, do for the country? So, of course, these people were able to centralize government under a rather strict rule. Additionally, they were also able to usher in economic advancements. And I think one of the most notable things that they were able to do, too, is that they were able to really foster and establish more infrastructure projects. When you think of infrastructure in Egypt, you might think of pyramids, but of course, in the modern day and age, we're actually talking and referring to highways, bridges, canals, some of those things like that that make countries run. But of course, one of the most notable things that they were able to do is they were able to expand Egypt into different areas like Sudan and in Libya to be a little bit more than what it's actually known to be today. Next question here, why was the Arab Spring both good and bad for Egypt? So in the main here, you might think that this was good because, of course, people were able to overthrow rulers. For example, if you remember a man by the name of Hosni Mubarak, he was the one who was overthrown first. It's also good in a way because I guess you can see people and the international community is now holding these people accountable. If you remember, of course, learning about Mohamed Morsi, he was the second leader in Egypt's history of late who was overthrown, and of course, I think tried in court. And of course, other dictators in the region like Muammar Gaddafi were tried and killed too. Now, why is this bad? Once again, the people who are actually taking over are maybe not the most ideal people to be running a country. These types of people who are ruling are known for being rather radical. Some of them, of course, radical Islamic extremists. The Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, for example, has their, I guess you could say, sway and persuasion over most of Egypt. Explain what is Egypt like today as a culture and society. List some major accomplishments and or features. So generally speaking, one of the biggest things that they have is a tourism industry. Although you could argue that they've seen their downfall and decline in tourism because of pyramid looting and antiquities being stolen on the black market, what they're able to capitalize off of is basically anything that's ancient still. And they're also able to do this in a way that is conducive to their needs to bolster their economy despite tough and trying times. Additionally, another thing that they're able to do is that they're able to embellish the idea off of, I guess you could say, religious tours and religiosity in general when it comes to understanding Egyptian pantheons, gods and goddesses, and all that. mixed with the Arab influences of the Islamic world, these types of things, of course, combine to show us how different religions showcase cultural advancement. And then, of course, a final thing down here at the very bottom, in case you can't see this, I'll try to zoom in here for you. One of the most important things that Egypt is today is they're basically the cornerstone of society and culture in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. And this proximal placement puts it in the center, if you will, of a great place to be, but also a pivotal place to be. Another example of this that might work against Egypt is the fact that they're so close to Israel, and they've had some problems with their next door neighbors as well. So anyway, guys, as you can see, those are some of the most important talking points for the Egypt Unit Study Guide. I hope that you found this review to be somewhat helpful here. And not only that, I also hope that you found essences of understanding how to format this correctly. I think it's important to get full credit, but I also think it's important for you to just kind of rehash some of these talking points for later so that you remember some of these things. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you found this to be helpful. Good luck in completing the rest of the study guide.